As the cost of living crisis continue to bite hard, we would in recent times understand the very fuel and food prices that have been soaring and rising through the roof. This show will today evaluate the 12-point agenda put out by the president. The president, in his major first speech on the current crisis, with the help of a man who has run the economy before, who's actually been in the seat as minister responsible for finance. Minister Secretary, you're welcome to our front.
Thank you very much.
I hope you're doing well.
Fairly well and managing.
Yeah, they say only easy lies the head that wears the crown. Your successor has come under a lot of fire. I'm sure you've been following.
Yes, I do follow development.
Yes. Do you support his removal? I mean, you shy away from the question, but I need to at some point answer it. Do you support his removal from office? I mean, his own MPs are asking that he should be removed. Do you support it?
As I keep saying, it's a prerogative of the president.
Yes, we know
that. It's also.
What do you think about removing non-functioning, substandard, non-performing ministers who are responsible for finance, especially those who say we should not go to the IMF? What do you think about that?
Well, my position is clear. There are checks and balances. That's why we have an executive authority. Mm-hmm. And it is up to the president to evaluate, and remove, appoint, and remove ministers. There are, several complex reasons. Mm-hmm. Some we know, we talk about, some we may not know why these actions are taken. Beyond that, there is a constitutional, requirements of powers, vested in parliamentarians.
Yes.
And we are seeing the two at play. Mm-hmm. And so probably we need constitutional experts at this stage to be educating us on what is going on.
So would there ever be a time you would answer the question whether your successor has underperformed and he should be removed?
I guess my point is an education one.
Okay, I get you. And I understand that. Now,
and it is true. No, it is true. No, honestly, I'm serious about it.
Informed by, because I've seen recently people sharing clips from when you were minister, when, for example, one says the former president saying that he's under pressure, people asking that he should remove you.
I saw one from my good friend, Kojo Ponkro.
Oh, okay.
He's my good friend.
Okay.
Yeah. So I saw him pose the question first. I've seen other MPs. Mm-hmm. But I think the data speaks for itself. I mean, when it comes to the economy, the data is there. It's up to, Ghanaians with presence of mind and then also with hindsight to see whether that call, was justified or not, or whether my boss thought at the time. I think he defended a position. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I mean by is the prerogative.
Is the current president right in not immediately removing the minister?
I am not in his position. It is very difficult. When you are not in the position
I get you.
of somebody like the president, to second guess him.
How do you feel when there are calls for your removal? In fact, during your time, it was not this massive. I didn't hear MPs come out and do press conferences like this. I didn't hear this rallying call, but even though there were some calls anyway. But how do you feel when the ministry you are actually in charge of, at the time that people feel there's crisis, there are calls for your removal?
Well, the point is that no human being is perfect. And if there's an element of truth in what, they are saying, you listen. If it is a question of misrepresentation, you try and explain yourself.
Okay.
And which is what, I did with press conferences and others, and then you remain as focused as possible. If I felt strongly that, the position was justified, well, I could have probably gone to the president. Again, that's privy, so whether I went to him and had a discussion or not, I prefer to let that, remain, because that is the prerogative of the president.
Now, there's a last one I'm asking. Merely because he was supposed to go into the IMF. I hope it's not the prerogative
of the president.
Merely because he was supposed to go into the IMF. Should the minister step aside?
Look, let me generalize the question. I
want a direct answer to this one.
No, because I was, one minister who received the formal notification. It's formal that Ghana had become a middle-income country. It comes from two sources who give us concessional financing: the World Bank and the African Development Bank. It comes with an awareness that the country is not going to continue getting concessional financing grants and must change the way it does its things, which is what informed, for example, a raft of measures from stabilization fund to sinking fund, the areas where we had, issues with the budget, and for which we always had, when there's a crisis, had to go to the fund. So we felt we should present an alternative, as other countries have done, to probably win ourselves off, the fund eventually. It wasn't going to be a precipitous move, sorry, with the word. But we needed to take steps gradually. So, for example, you cannot be borrowing and borrowing, without a mechanism for repayment. Solution we preferred was sinking fund, which was in the Constitution. 2, definitely that you cannot run an economy continuously for 2 to 3 years without one crisis or the other, domestic or foreign.
Okay.
So we put in the mechanism which other countries, buffers, stabilizers, right? Which, luckily with hindsight, we had started doing with oil revenue. So the theme of the 2015 budget was rebalancing the budget. So by the time we were ready for the program, you recall very well that we had a homegrown policy, which we subjected to discussions at Senchi. But then the budget support started drying up, so we went to the fund. Now, one approach of going to the fund is to say, this is my homegrown program. I am going to make the effort to be on my own. But as a member of the fund, may I enter into what you call a policy support instrument with you? So if the road gets rough, then I come. Only when I need, that help. But you can come and monitor. After all, you come in to do Article 4, so come and monitor whatever we are doing and prefer advice. Kenya at the point, was doing that.
Okay.
So that was the path which, so I'm explaining this to mean that there isn't something fundamentally wrong with saying, let us try and see whether our country can stand on its own feet by preferring solutions to problems that we know will be inevitable. But when that inevitable problems comes, which are domestic crises, droughts, floods, commodity prices induced from outside and all that, then as members of the fund, we reserve the rights, just like Portugal, Ireland, Spain, and Greece, advanced countries at a point, remember during the global finance crisis, went to the fund, and we could go to the fund, for a very short term. And that is where the original intervention expression came. Standby. It's a standby facility.
Okay.
Yeah, so the fund is on standby, to assist you, which is what the advanced countries sometimes do quietly without, or the middle income countries, because within a short period, they're out, they've paid, and they're out. That is once the bus, ends and the boom starts, then they pay and they're out. So I let me just summarize by saying, I did not think, and that was the essence of the homegrown policy, that there was, anything wrong with trying to be on your feet. But when the problems are obvious, when you have stopped these initiatives from, self-financing to, stabilization fund with 3 oil fields and whatever, then you must know that when the crisis, strike, you will need help. And when you have not been able to manage with $6 billion in 2 years coming in, then there's something fundamentally wrong. 2020-21.
I had the interviews with you prior to we deciding to go to the IMF, and government has said on several occasions it was almost becoming like a broken record government had insisted we would never go to the IMF.
But you know my response.
Your successor, you said that.
No, excuse me. No.
You said that they needed to show us some evidence to support
exactly.
that.
Yes, that they should show as alternative because the economy was ailing and the economy was going down and we were being downgraded. So I used to say we are at a point where we need IMF assistance. When the government, my government, because they represent all of us, say we are not going, then it was then my right to say, then where is the alternative for resolving, the problem? Just as we had a home group, but when we were not getting that important World Bank budget support and development partner support, then we decided that it was time to go to the fund because we couldn't, with single spine, with doomsday, arrears and whatever, it was going to be impossible for us.
Did you personally oppose the decision to go to the IMF?
I've given you the context. I said I believe strongly, that we needed to have our program and make the effort, right, using the PSI. That element has never come out because Kenya and others were doing at the time, policy support instrument, where we would go in for that facility. Remember we used to do poverty reduction facility, then enhanced credit facility. Some countries do the standby, as I'm saying. And I'm saying one instrument which is an intermediate step towards winning yourself of the fund is to say, I have my program, I have buffers and stabilizers, we have them in a homegrown policy, which we've drawn with assistance of, the African Development Bank, and therefore could we do, a PSI, could we do a policy support instrument so that
you prefer the PSI and not an ECF? I'm
saying as an intermediate step, which I think as a middle income country, that should be our goal.
Okay, right. Because
ultimately,
it's been said out there, right?
Ultimately,
that even you oppose the IMF, but still you are a minister.
Well, that's what I'm taking time to explain because issues can be simplified.
Yeah.
Right. I remember I've been a staff of the fund and I've seen what other countries. So that's how I'm explaining.
I get
issues can be simplified. Some that oversimplified. Yeah.
They say you didn't lead Ghana's IMF negotiations.
Who signed?
Oh, you've not heard it before?
No, who said it? No, I'm asking a question. Who signed the letter of intent?
Who signed the letter?
Yeah, who signed the letter of intent?
Frankly,
who signed the MEFP? You can Google and check.
So you led it?
I'm saying you can Google and check.
No, but the question I'm asking is that because the thinking was that minister could still be there and a different person is leading our negotiations with the IMF because of previous statements.
No.
That's what I'm actually
No, that wasn't our experience. The fact that we had a team, did not mean that the Minister for Finance was not there. Did not mean that the Minister for Finance was not at the table where the discussions are being held. I've heard that said even by academics, and I think that they should be careful sometimes, what they say. So yes, it's true, we had a team. It was Dr. Butcher who chaired it. So let me clarify today. We had a team, and it was Dr. Butcher who chaired it, alternating occasionally with the chairman of the economic management team. After all, it's a nation's economic program. He has a rich experience. 19 years of doing, all these things. Yes, so we did have a team. So let me clarify. But there was none of the discussions across the table where I did not participate with my deputies.
I agree with you definitely because this is also another clarification that's being put out there.
Yes.
The argument is that the current team shouldn't be chaired by a finance minister. Do you support the team?
That's a prerogative of the government.
What do you
Because there is no one way.
But
I'm saying that ultimately.
Were you consulted?
No, excuse me. I said I've been sitting there.
No, not here. Not here. I'm talking about the current engagement. As somebody who's engaged the IMF before, were you consulted prior to government going this time around? In all of these 2 or 3 negotiations we've been having with the IMF currently, were you consulted?
My president called for a national dialogue. As far as I'm concerned, there was no such national dialogue.
So you're not consulted?
I've not been, consulted on the issue. But the government has its team, so yes, as a citizen, and I think
I'm making this
proposal,
I'm worried about the kind of deal we are getting from them.
No, but the point is that I think I've been on your show, other shows and others, to express my view about what I know with my what a nation has invested in me, as a public servant.
But that's different from the official consultation.
No, what I'm saying is that contributing, to a discussion, of a program, does not necessarily have to mean that you must be, formal, you must receive a formal invitation. And you will agree with me that at the time, despite Senchi and everything, we did have, members of the government. Yes, I wouldn't want to mention names, but, I'm known to have had discussions, some of the breakfast sessions and whatever, with, members of the, on the other side, to discuss policy issues and the rest. So
why is it not happening now?
I talk to friends in NPP.
Oh, no, I'm talking about official government engagement. But let me move on with this question. This question is important.
Which is?
Where we are today, I just heard some clarification on our engagement with the IMF. Apparently, the government's hope is that we are only supposed to get a staff level agreement before the end of the year. Earlier, some of us were given to understand that we'll have an IMF program ready before the end of the year. What is a staff level agreement, and at what stage is this staff level agreement? How is it different from an IMF program signed, sealed, and delivered?
I think I've mentioned some of the key steps, not every detail, I believe, on your morning program. Or every country have dedicated staff, we call them the mission team, working on a country. That's the style of the fund. And they normally belong to the area departments. And we, as an African country, are in the African department, which is why you see during the annual meetings, it was, Mr. Bebe Selassie, who was often, talking about our, and then we do also have the World Bank, who has country team, and normally they do joint. African Development Bank, has country teams, and we don't have, part of that team includes the resident office that is here, with the resident, director, or in the case of the World Bank, the country, director. That's the team. So the team in Africa that works with us, together with the country economists, usually from the Fiscal Affairs Department, or from Africa itself, or from, and then from the monetary, department which deals with the central banks. So they constitute the team, and they have a mission chief. So Ghana always has a mission chief. I think you've met them when they meet the media. So they're the ones who do the engagement, right? And they are doing it on behalf of the area department, so that's which is level. Africa. That's the staff. Okay. So you're having conversations with the staff. So staff level discussions, staff level negotiations, and you will reach an agreement with them because they know the country. They have been assigned to work on the country. They have looked. They are the ones who come and do Article 4, for example.
Okay.
Yes. So those are the very people together with some. So since they know the country, you negotiate initially with them. Of course, they do reports, and you would have the courtesy of management of Africa, for example. Last time they were in Washington, sometimes sitting in. It doesn't mean that they are completely disengaged, particularly the deputy director who may be in charge of Africa, and some other members participate. Sometimes even invite fiscal affairs and other departments to also legal departments and others to participate. But the effort is led by the mission. That's the staff. So when you have that agreement with them, then they will report to the Africa department, that we have tentative agreement. Africa department will then circulate their draft report, which their management and other senior members will review, right? Excuse me. That draft report ordinarily, when it's signed off within Africa, will be sent, to the other departments, right? The technical departments. For example, FAD is the one that will look at our revenue strategy, our expenditure strategy, because that's what they also comment, right? And then the report is put together. If there are questions, they engage the country again, right? So if we are so sure, pretty sure, that we want to reach agreement with that team, what it means is that at the last, meeting, there is a document in existence which by now is circulating, say within the departments, which would form the basis of a possible agreement at the staff level, right, at Africa level, by the end of the year. it by no means doesn't mean, it by no means means that you have an agreement.
So
because once that is approved by, you have agreement with the, they've raised the issues with the country and the agreement is approved by Africa, then that document at that staff level, that Africa document, will now go to every executive director. Because it's not Africa which is going to the board. Remember, it's a board that approves. So it goes to every executive director.
would that
because
be
they are
fair
the members.
complete? Would that be just a process?
No, because that's also rigorous. Because their own staff would also read the document and provide comments. And so if it's another country, right? If it's another country, Ghana's executive director, right? And if it's particularly, let's say, a West African country or whatever, with our official who is in his office, who will be commenting on those reports, and write a brief for the executive directors. If they have questions, they bring it back. Some of them Africa can answer, some of them they inquire of the authorities, right? So it is only at that stage that the board date is fixed.
Now, let me just do it this way. Yes. How many steps are involved? 4, 5, or 3?
I think so far I've mentioned, it's not uniform per se, but you can say about 4 steps.
4 steps. Where are we?
Let's see what we have gone through. 4, 5. Let's see where we have gone through. There was first staff visit to gather data, right? So they went to compile it. Second staff visit, they came back with the data, had meetings here in Accra, if you remember.
Yes.
Right? So that can be step 2 or still part of step 1. Then there's a major step, which is the negotiations. May have started, with the second one when they were here, but it went on in earnest when we went ahead of the annual meetings and after the annual meetings. But remember, we were seeing some of the issues coming out when the Director for Africa said, we're waiting for Ghana to show that they can make their debt sustainable.
I get your point too, yes. But what I want clarity
so that's yeah.
By the end of the year, when we reach the staff level agreement, what step will we be and how many steps will be left?
It depends on how fast you go. So I think a better question is how many negotiations would we have engaged in? It depends on how transparent we have been, how forthcoming we will be with data, how, remember they do also have access to.
I get your point, but I'm saying that when you get the staff level agreement, does that mean you have a program?
No, I think I answered that. Staff level agreement only means that you have come very far with Africa, and it's now going to be elevated to the board of directors. It's the board of directors who are going to say.
On the average, how long would it take for us to get a program from staff level?
I don't think we've done a program. I've answered that question several times. I don't think we've done any program, even if it is a minor one, in less than 6 months.
From staff level?
From staff level, yes, it could take another 6 months. Because, there's further reviews that are going to be done.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Because we, the Republic of Ghana, are interested in when the program is completed, what it means for us, and finally getting to know when the money is coming in.
I think it's the current situation that we have that is leading to the anxiety and maybe a bit of ambiguity in saying that we are going to have a program by the end of the year, which some of us have said would be very ambitious, especially since the staff that should also be answering questions, renegotiating and doing another round, and are the very staff who are going to be working on the budget, our own budget, which will take 1.5 months from reading in the middle of November to getting an appropriation. And that itself is also very important because you need appropriation for government not to shut down.
Now,
but another important thing which the budget could do would be to contain whatever preliminary agreements, may have been reached. But of course, that will be a consensus with the fund. And that will clarify a lot of issues, even in terms of the speculation, some of the speculation that's going on. And clarify some of the questions that you are asking.
I get you. Now, I want to clearly put this on record. We have gone through this. And I'm asking these questions because, as we speak, a lot depends on the IMF program. But the president listed 12 key measures to fix the economy. We'll go through them. What I want to really hear from you is, this will work, this will not work, this does not make sense, this really makes sense. I know that you're being hesitant on that, but let's start from this point. We already have a fuel crisis on our hands.
There is nothing like a policy which will categorically work or not work. It depends on its design.
Yes, but if I ask you the question, don't we get the point?
Okay.
Yes. As we speak today, how do we deal with the current fuel crisis? You've seen it, right? 23 for diesel, 17 for, some even quoting 18 for what they call it, super. That's massive. It's hitting the pockets of the people consistently. Government is exploring cheaper options or getting, until we are going to somewhere in the UAE to actually go and engage them and get cheaper fuel. I know that when you were a minister, you concurrently took some power job to acting as minister along the line. So you should have an idea of how this space works. In any case, finance ministers pay the money for some of these things. Are these options on the table realistic and will they work?
Well, when you ask a question, what have we done?
We say we have already.
As I mean, what have we done in the past?
Okay, yeah.
Subsidy. And that means that we have built or attempt to build all the time, a buffer in the budget to pay subsidy.
Government said there's no money to pay subsidy.
Precisely. So it's depleted. And we didn't add to it. And the subsidy element that was in ESLA, right, it's collateralized. Right? The subsidy element that was in ESLA, another component that was in ESLA with which we started the strategic stocks. Remember in 2015, 2016, we started strategic stocks. Minimal level. We are not talking about US level strategic stocks. But by our modest standards and as a beginning measure, we started building strategic stocks. And we were releasing them in 2016 when crude oil prices started to go up, gradually, right? They were stopped. So whether it's, yes, so that's it. So the point is whether we abate now, or later will depend on whether we can raise enough revenue, service our debt and others, commitments, and begin, right, to have some room for payment of subsidy. Because otherwise, then we'll have to go and borrow for that subsidy.
So what you're saying,
and if it is not
immediately, there's no way government can intervene.
The prices are being liberalized, and that means that there's no alternative. That's what it means. The prices are being completely passed through. Yeah. Yes. And so it means that, those buffers that we used to build in the past are no longer there. They were not built up.
How long would it take us to build these buffers?
It takes quite a lot, quite a while, because, of course, some of it is still flowing, but as I said, it's probably collateralized, because we are still paying ESLA. Yeah, but because we collateralize that element is servicing, past there. So the question of what did we do with the collateralized amount? So why did the NDC, which is the same question with the energy sector?
So why didn't the NDC go to look for cheaper fuel for us?
Of course we did.
We did?
Yeah, those were one I recall very well as a deputy minister being on a delegation to Libya.
Okay.
Yeah, to have discussions.
Libya, rather.
Back then, it was Libya.
Okay.
It wasn't, Libya didn't have, a war. Remember, even the OEU conferences were being held by Gaddafi.
So this cheaper fuel option is realistic?
Governments have alliances and all that. I am not privy, to, how applicable, how feasible, the option could be. But I believe that the president probably picked a phone, spoke to somebody, or some other, So it's just like the vaccine era, right?
But is it sustainable?
When crude oil prices start to rise or fall, producing countries also take advantage to cure their budgets and whatever. So it depends on how long this crisis is going to last. And I'm not sure whether, in terms of sustainability, it is a feasible option. We need to have, build structures, which is, as I said, we started doing. As I said, with sinking fund for debt.
This cheaper option, how long would it take us to realize it?
I wouldn't know. because until the results come out and we are told we are going to get so many gallons of fuel over an estimated period of the crisis, until crude oil prices begin to fall, until maybe shale gas begins to come into a boom in the U.S. again, and the last time it was the shale gas that, until any of those developments, we know the things that could lead to a fall in the crude oil price, but what we don't know, I don't know for sure, you may not know, is the background deals that are taking place by now to secure, a cheaper fuel.
Now, some of the options that have been put on the table, we want to strengthen our fiscals to restore and sustain debt sustainability. By this, we will reduce debt to GDP to 55% from the current levels. And of course, we are servicing our debt pegged no more than 80% of the annual revenue by 2028. We are committed to improving the revenue collection effort.
Can we take them one by one?
Is that?
Can we take them?
Yes. Okay. Debt to GDP, 55% by 2028.
Yeah, but you don't have to all that other is.
What do you mean by it?
2016 was 57.
Uh-huh.
So it means we doubled it, or we are supposed to be doubling it to 90, 100. So you are doing 100% climb down of what you went up. Yeah, it came from 57. Yeah, 57 includes, of course, you remember the exchange rate saga, whether it is end December or end March. You remember that, yes, I think it's still end March. So maybe 55 would have been appropriate if they had used end December. So it means that we are setting a target, for the level at which President Mahama, left in 2016. And so we have doubled it. So that I'm telling you practically what it means.
Yes, but why do you say it's a tall order?
It took us 6 years to double it.
Yes, it will take us 6 years to bring it back to the same level.
Of course, yes.
Why is that a tall order?
4 years after the current administration is gone.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the meaning. You must know that's the meaning of 6 years.
Yeah, I get you, but I'm saying that if it's 6 years, why is it a tall order? It's an ambitious plan.
Well, yes, it's an ambitious plan, but do you know what crisis is going to come? Which is why we shouldn't have stopped, the stabilization fund, because that's its purpose. You build it up when, things, are good, and then you deplete it when, with 3 oil fields, we didn't build it up. So if only we can learn, take those baby steps that we started and not stop it again when times are good, yes, then it can be achieved. But if we are going to have the policy setbacks with 3 oil fields, not build, stop building, the perfect stabilization fund, 250 million, actually about 400 million, much of that 250 million was left, from 2016. 1 oil field, 3 oil field, we never built on it, despite getting, so much inflows for COVID and the rest. So that's why I'm saying that it's okay. If you like, I can say it's likely to be a tall order, likely, because provided, we went back and started doing some of those corrections.
Okay. Now, one of the other questions, we want to improve that revenue effort to 18%. The government says the revenue to GDP is currently 13%. Now, some of the measures include...
No, I think you are saying 2 things. 18% is supposed to be the debt service.
No, that's different. I'm talking about revenue now. The debt service is, yes, of course. I mean, we are looking at external debt pegged at no more than 80% of our annual revenue.
And currently you are doing about 60.
60?
Yes, of revenue. Add interest, to add interest to compensation, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see. So at the end of 2021, we ended with interest of 33.5, amortization 13, 13, giving us 46 Ghana cedis. Mm-hmm. And the revenue that came in was 70. So more than half, right? So, and then fast forward, the revised budget, 41, interest, amortization 9.7, that gives you 51, right? And we are supposed to get a revenue of 96. Remember, it will climb down from 100 to 96. We may not never do that. We may do 80. So that's about 5/8 or something, of, total revenue, right? And we want to lower this, which is, okay, the ratios are there. So interest plus amortization was 66.4, 45. It's supposed to be 52. And then by the end of the first half of the year, it was 69%, the two, of total revenue. And so we want to reduce this to 18.
Yeah.
It's steep. You agree with me?
Realistic
69 is
or
about
realistic?
7. Oh, that's not a matter of being, I don't like to think realistic or not realistic. Yes. I'm saying how feasible. And I'm giving you the climb down.
I get you, but I want to know from you whether you think it's feasible or not feasible.
Within 6 years?
Yes.
It's feasible.
It's feasible.
Yes, but again, my proviso, revenue will have to be beefed up. Okay. And that's the essence of the program.
Oh, so they
mentioned and you have to cut expenditure.
Well, they mentioned...
And we are not talking about expenditure.
No,
Which expenditure?
They didn't mention expenditure here. They actually mentioned revenue anyway. And
yeah, but you can't do that on only revenue.
All right.
If it was possible to do it on revenue, we wouldn't be having a deficit of so much. We are not talking about the expenditures.
We're talking about standard debt here. Because we're talking about standard debt, there's a question.
Yes.
When the president says categorically that there will not be any haircut, and information minister clarifies that he's talking about haircut on principle, do you agree?
Presidents are allowed to make a slip.
Is that?
Presidents are allowed a slippage once in a while.
I get you, but my question is, do you think it's a feasible thing that there will not be any haircuts at all when it comes to debt restructuring?
I know there will be debt restructuring, just as we did. Every program has had a debt restructuring. But we moved from debt restructuring to debt management, if you read my tweet.
Okay.
Yes, we had a debt restructuring. Every program.
Did you do haircut?
There were some haircuts by the banks, but we had cash. And so it was a matter of negotiations. And let me give you the circumstance in which we did that. There were two of them. We set up the sinking fund, so we had money, oil revenue.
Okay.
Right? And then we also did the World Bank guaranteed bond, 1 billion, which we said we were going to which we used to actually pay down the domestic bonds that were issued, for the single spine and some other. So that's cash, okay. Right? So when I didn't have cash, right, you bid high. So when I had cash and it becomes obvious to the markets, that I am now in a position to pay down, right? We saw interest rates going down.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so the banks took, a cut from where they were all the way down. Second example, ESLA. When we did ESLA, and the first restructuring of VRA debt, right? Yes, VRA was in hot waters. And the interest rate was 11, 13% or whatever. We did ESLA and I have the taxpayers' money. So why should I continue paying 11% or 13%? So we negotiated 8.5, right? But again, they know they have the cash. And they know if they don't come in that's a negotiation. They don't come in for a negotiation, I'll probably go and get, pay them off and go and, borrow, that money and pay over time. So we did that. So we got, so the problem we are having now is that, government does not have, those included the ESLA, which was, collateralized and whatever. And that is the difficulty that is. And the government, remember, cannot also now go. Why it's difficult is that it is not able to go to the external market. And therefore it needs to nurture, it needs to really hold the domestic market as delicately as an egg, because that is what is providing the resources.
Question. The president said we have decided to continue the policy of 30% cut in the salaries of political office holders, presidents and other people. And
do you know that since this policy was implemented, it has achieved less than 1%? 1% of reduction in expenditure. Yes, it is indicative. It is something to show that, the president and his people are also going to, have some sacrifice. Remember, President Mahama also cut, salaries of, all of us. Yes, to show that as leaders, If we are going to ask ordinary Ghanaians for a sacrifice, we must also show the lane. But it is not the substantive thing. And I'm saying that those measures, which if we calculated them, it's less than 1%. Because we know by the media review, we know that the media expenditure, yes, it went up slightly and whatever. So it means that you will need more substantive expenditure measures.
Now, let me bring this one in. Maybe you might find this substantive.
Everything is substantive.
They'll continue.
Everything I'm saying is substantive.
No, I'm talking about as a measure. I'm not talking about what you're saying. I'm talking about the 10%.
Measure.
Yes.
I consider all of them to be substantive.
Okay, I get you. Now, this president also said we'll continue with the 30% cut in discretionary expenditures of ministries, departments, and agencies. Substantive, would they decrease expenditure substantively?
Discretionary.
Yes.
It's been squeezed out already. Compensation and interest is taking everything. And you know that even for school feeding, they are saying they don't, that's where the money comes from. So what are we going to cut when we owe the people, for discretionary expenditure?
Is that substantial?
Look, we are not talking about the animal in the room. And that is the flagship expenditure policies. That's what we face. Remember, we also face a squeeze. Crude oil prices fell. And we touched them. We did. President Mahama, he touched his schools.
Flagships are 3 SHS, 1 district, 1 factory, and there is one.
That's the element. Remember, no, there are 2 elements of 1D1F. There is the element, of the private investor bringing in their money. So the policy changed. It wasn't we providing the money. Yes. And then we gave, of course, we gave some concessions and whatever, exemptions. Yes, they are motivational, but at the moment, it's going to be very difficult when you have to raise revenue.
We're told that,
and I'm saying that
this flagship, actually, we spent over the last 6 or so years, we spent a little over 15 billion on them. To Dr. Bawumia, for example, that's not as substantive as other areas that we spent money in. So touching the flagship then of itself may not be as instrumental as you want us to believe.
Well, then we are not going to achieve the goal. It's as simple as that.
Because
if you are saying,
we've had this conversation.
I'm saying that those are the discretionary areas where government is spending.
Yeah.
The discretionary where government are spending can come from as minor in quotes in terms of size. Okay. As school feeding, and other, right, taking on our boarding costs and everything, which we all agree, it's essential. The issue is whether we can continue borrowing to support them, because revenue is being taken by the interest which we borrowed from past, and then compensation, which includes the teachers and the rest. That's the reality. So whatever is left, I'm saying, it's been squeezed out already, including capital expenditure, which is why we are borrowing to support all of that. So I'm saying if you are going to cut it, including the arrears, where you are owing contractors, are the contractors going to get a haircut? Because that's also part of what is left.
I get your point.
Yes.
No, yes. But you know that FUSHS
so I'm saying that,
it's untouchable. You know that.
Then the deficit will not go down. Then your debt will not go down. Then you cannot achieve, you can't bring it down to 18%. Unless GRA can bring in revenue.
Now, let me bring
And we are not seeing that.
Let me bring this point too. And this point is essential because we are talking about other things that government would like to do. Government look going forward. On the Forex part, we want to reduce importation. We want to restrict, for example, Forex flow to those who import rice and other products. The president mentioned them: fruit juice, toothpicks, vegetable oil, poultry, bottled water, ceramics. Government's plan is to restrict and review the management of our Forex in relation to these ones. Would it substantially bring down our imports?
But we implement a benchmark for all of this. We reduce the value on which the imports are valued. And that is part of why we have the demand, for imports. You remember the benchmark?
Yeah.
So 100 became 50. Or 65, depending on whether 50% is abated or not. So previously, so we can do a quick calculation. You bring in rice, 100. Let's say duty, simplified, 10. 10%. So the duty was what? 10. You add it, so the price is 110. And then you add domestic cost. Then you slash, benchmark, the 100 to 50. The duty of 10% becomes what? 5. The cost that used to be 110 for imports becomes 55.
Okay, yeah.
How can they compete with domestic production? And you're now going to chase, people to stop the importation, a ban.
But this benchmark was not what they call it, 2019.
But it's still in existence. So I'm telling you the reason why we're depleting what? Remember, GRA is losing revenue. 2,
but
you are making domestic.
This is a renewed measure. Government is restricting forex flow to them in a way that they cannot actually do as much import as they are doing. Would that work? That's restricting forex flow to.
And there was a time. Remember, there was a time when we were distributing, we were rationalizing, forex flow, allocation, official, and all that.
Did they work?
If they were to work, the pre-ERP sub policies would be in place. They would still be in place. Senko was being rationalized and all those things. So, as a temporary measure, perhaps yes. But I'm saying that if you wanted them to be, the structural measure that we need to build this country, then all the measures that came after ERP SAF would not have been as better off, than what used to, prevail. No. There was this book during the global financial crisis. I think I mentioned it in one of our discussions. The topic was, the title of the book is "This Time is Different."
Okay, now that's interesting. Now, there's a question though, that they are asking national security, reduce our dependence on importer. It's a matter of national security. We are going to reduce our dependence on imported goods. This is part of the plan.
I'm saying that you have gone. I think you are. I'm saying that you've gone ahead to make the imports cheap, and then now you say you want national security. To do. The policy has made the thing cheap. So there's a contradiction in policy.
Now, let's look at the Forex challenges. Yes. Yeah. Let's look at the Forex challenges. I appear to be too excited about the things you're saying, but let's look at the Forex challenges. Now, the things government want to do in this area is enhance the supervisory role of the Bank of Ghana to make sure that the black market is flushed out and legal operators are dealt with properly.
The biggest headache.
There's the expectation of fresh inflows of also dollars.
The biggest headache Bank of Ghana has.
What is it?
Right. Okay. 2010. 2020. On account of COVID, Bank of Ghana gave the equivalent of 1.7 billion to support the budget, to finance the deficit.
Cedis.
10 billion.
Okay, 10 billion cedis, yeah.
So the equivalent is
1.7
billion.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Where did Bank of Ghana get the money from?
It's reserves.
Of course, our reserves.
Okay, yeah, our reserves.
Right. Yeah. So that's how that was started.
But of crisis period.
That's what, fine. Crisis period.
Yes.
Remember we got IMF 1 billion.
Yeah, we got money from other places.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, which no government had ever gotten to tackle a crisis.
I get your point, but COVID was extraordinary.
I'm saying that we were living beyond our means already.
That's what you think is the main problem of...
Of course, otherwise 3 billion at a time. 3 billion, including our own stabilization fund and whatever, should have been more than enough to cater for COVID. After all, the government told the IMF that the cost of COVID was 3% of GDP. It's here.
Okay.
It's in these calculations. If we have time, we can look at it. It's here. IMF Article 4 and RCF report. What they reported and everything is here. Right? Mm-hmm. But those monies were not enough because, of course, we said we were just like now. We are not touching, flagship policies. We are not, So despite all those monies which came in for COVID, instead of focusing on COVID, much of the money went into those other programs.
So when you go through...
So, excuse me. So I'm saying that, fast forward, after these inflows had increased to about 6 billion, and I'm not adding our own sovereign bond.
Okay.
Right? we are still depending on Bank of Ghana by the mid-year review to have contributed 22 billion out of the 37 billion deficit. Bank of Ghana financed 22 billion. Where did the money come from?
Reserves.
So why are you surprised that the cedi is depreciating? Because it's Bank of Ghana which is now using the reserves that we have as a country.
So you agree with those who say that Bank of Ghana is partly to blame for the current depreciation?
It's government policy.
Okay, I mean, essentially.
Yes, so I'm saying that yes. And remember, we are a country that is moving from zero financing of the budget which we achieved in 2016. Zero financing means Bank of Ghana was financing zero. Everything was being financed from the government's own borrowing or from its revenue sources. To the point where to test, is being, of the deficit is being financed by, and that was just the middle of the year. So by the end of the time we end the year, is Bank of Ghana going to be financing 30? We are waiting to see.
Categorically, I hear you saying most of these measures are either maybes or may not work. That's actually what I hear you saying.
No, I'm only discussing.
No, I get your
only
point. I'm not asking you to comment on that part. The question I'm asking you now is, what did you want to hear that you didn't hear? First, you mentioned targeting.
Oh, the measures are short term. I think I would be in denial if I said that the president was not mentioning some policies. Remember, I said this time is different. This time is not different. Some of the policies they are often policies that are used short term.
Okay.
Right? But we have deeper issues now. And I'm saying that the reason why I am adding those caveats is that I don't see the big issues, flagships and others, reversal of policies which created a problem there. I don't see them in the speech. Maybe they'll be in the budget. And so I'm only drawing attention to the fact that, beneath this, yes, there are measures which we have used in the past. Right? And remember some of the temporary measures we have or the measures that are supposed to be temporary. ESLA, temporary import duty, financial sector, levy, they've become permanent. And we have added more levies, including e-levy. And so it means that something is taking all this money, and now we want to go and, in addition, if the measure is there, I'm sure you come to it, property tax, which from time immemorial, colonial era, has always been the mainstay for local government, resources. Now we want to go and take that too. And then we say capping, right? No, we have a capping law on the books since 2017. We've been capping. What we need is accountability for what, the capping that was done since 2017 when the money has been used. DSCF is being capped already. IGFs are being capped. Get fund, of course, collateralized now. So the statutory funds are being capped. So what is it? It was a new law. I think that Parliament should rather require, an accounting for the capping that was done. It's not a new policy. We've been capping. It's in law. The Capping Act is there.
In conclusion, what will work now? In just a minute.
These measures, if they target the causes. I'm not faulting, all the measures that are here, right? But I'm saying that, if they tackle what is leading to the borrowing and what is leading to our inability to pay for the borrowing because we do not have access and is therefore putting pressure on Bank of Ghana to be depleting our resources, why are we blaming Bank of Ghana? What's Bank of Ghana financing?
Our programs and other things.
Of course, yes. They're financing them from zero, to 3/4 of the budget. It should tell us that there's something wrong, fundamentally wrong.
They say my time is up. I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to do this conversation again. But many thanks to you for joining me in the studio and for saying that government's measures, they don't look like they will yield the results that we want to actually have.
Are you paraphrasing?
Yes, almost doing so because I don't have time. Many thanks to you for joining us. Folks, that's what ends today's edition of UPfront, and we hope you enjoyed it.